it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. Well, today we are going very much tone on tone, and this is so super simple. We are using some older products today, that's for sure, but that's a great way to make the most of our stash. And it doesn't have to be specific to these things I'm using. You can do this with whatever you have in your stash, so that is always helpful too. First of all, I am starting off with a coloured card base. I make all my own card bases, starting off with using the Spellbinders trimmer to do the cutting, and then I always use, this one happens to be the Dress My Craft trimmer, which I have my scoring blade on, and I just score it in half, so we create a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch side fold card. This colour is the Ocean Mist colour. Now I like to start with a coloured card base for this, hence it's going to be tone on tone, so we're going to do blue on blue for this one. I'll show you another one in a moment with some yellow on yellow as well. Just use whatever colours that you have, and if you don't already have the card base colour to start with, then by all means you can colour it with some inks as well. This is most definitely an older stamp set, but I have just linked it. It is still available. This is the Altenew Leaf Canopy. Now, I feel like I could make a whole playlist on my channel of times I have used this stamp in videos. This is just super, super handy. But basically, all you need is an outline stamp for this because we are going to be colouring in the centres. So I am just sort of thinking about placement where I want to use that. I'm going to use the larger one up the top. I could also use the smaller outline one down the bottom as well, but I think I'm just going to use the top one a couple of times over. And for this one, I am going to use my stamping platform. Now, in my stamping platform, to grab hold of my cardstock, I have the Altenew sticky mats, and I actually have a video coming up. If it's not already out, it'll be out just after this one on how I position these. I cut them down just slightly because they are too big for my stamping platform, but this is what I have found to be the absolute best for grip in my platform. I know there's lots of different options out there and lots of different platforms too, but I have only just had to change one over after more than 6 months of daily use, so that is pretty good value to me, and I know that that's not what their intended use is, but very, very handy. Now I'm going to use some Versamark sticky embossing ink, any embossing ink, and I have just positioned my stamp to sort of come over the corners, I guess. I obviously am going to pop a sentiment in the center, so I'm going to frame that. But just because I cannot see the Versamark very well on here, I'm going to stamp it a couple of times to make sure I got a decent impression, and I'm thinking about using silver embossing powder. I reposition the stamp it again, so that, as I said, I'm going to frame my sentiment, and so I want to have some at the bottom and some at the top. Sprinkle over the silver embossing powder, and I do want to make sure that my heat gun is really warm before I bring it to my card base. The less amount of time that I can hold the heat gun to my paper, to my cardstock, I have the least chance of it warping. So I tend to make sure it's really hot first against my hand, and then I will quickly move it around and get all of that heat embossing sorted, melted, and gorgeous and silver. I think both silver and gold would work really well here, but I haven't done silver in a while, and I really do like blue and silver together. I think it's going to stand out really well, so I am going to use that. Now, for the colouring, I'm going to use the True Blue Blend TriBlend markers from Spectrum Noir. These have 3 different colours in one pen. Now, I purchased years ago at this point the essentials of this, and there are 24 markers, which, you know, times 3 is going to give you 72 different shades of marker. These are my absolute go-to for alcohol markers. I would recommend these until the cows come home, because this one is just, it's really good value for me. Someone who does a small to medium amount of alcohol marker colouring, I would say. I've never ever had a barrel run out, and I've used these a lot, all the different colours. Great staple to have. You can buy some of them, if not most of them, individually as well, but this has been a great investment for me. Now I am choosing just a couple of the colours, couple of the blues to do here, so that there's a couple of different shades. I'm using the medium and the light, so there's a light, medium and dark of each colour here. Now, alcohol markers, depending on the colour, they are sometimes going to bleed through, and this one did. Now, some of the colors I find don't as much, and obviously it depends how many times you go over them, how thoroughly you color them, and with this one it just did. So that's okay, we can adjust. I'm going to cut this off of the card base, trim it down so that it's going to have a border, and then I will adhere it to another card base soon. So I have the Ribbon Bloom sentiments here. This is from Creative Expressions, and these are just gorgeous. Something a little bit different than anything I have, that's for sure. And so I really like these. There's actually some other sets of them. I just got the sort of main sentiments that I would use, but tempting to go back and have a look at the others because I really like the scripty font. I just think it delivers the sentiment beautifully. And some cards specifically, you really just want that scripty sort of elegant look, and I think that this fits the bill. Anyhow, I'm using some white embossing powder because it's going to stand out against the blue. Then these cards are relatively not simple at the moment, but just basic. And so I'm going to do a couple of things to elevate. One is I'm going to take a white colouring in pencil and do a little bit of shading through the centre of the leaves. Now, you absolutely could do this with your alcohol markers, and when you are doing the shading, you could do it that way. For me, this takes far less time. It's very simple, a much simpler technique. I would encourage you to stick around to the end. It has some close-up photos of all these bits and pieces. It gives much clearer visions of the finished cards so that you can see the finer detail. So make sure you stick around for that. But just all these little details that you can do to step up your gorgeous cards are really important, and don't take too long at all. So a good white colouring pencil is going to be key. You might choose to have filled in the leaves with regular ink. You might have done like watercolour pencils or colouring in pencils, or it doesn't matter. Choose a media and go for gold. Now, because I had the white heat embossing on there, I'm going to pop this onto a white matting layer, which is something a little different and fun, but then I'm going to pop it down onto a blue card base. So I just create another one of those card bases. That's why I trimmed down the card front quite a lot, so that we were able to have a couple of little borders and that matting layer, and I think the matting layer just makes all the difference. I didn't even pop up any of the layers, so this card is relatively flat. A few little silver gems here and there to catch the eye, to sparkle. The embossing powder does a pretty good job of that, but all these little finishing touches, and this is a relatively basic and simple card, yet absolutely gorgeous. Okay, moving on from blue to yellow. Now the next one I'm going to do, this is going to be using an All and Create stamp set. This one is called Anemone, and I think it might be tricky to find now. It seems to have disappeared off the radar, but nonetheless we'll keep using it. It's still gorgeous. We're mainly going to be using that flower head, and then I'm going to use some lemon chiffon cardstock here. You can purchase this in packs of the cardstock, but you can also purchase it in side fold ready scored cards, and that is what I have. I'm actually going to use one of them. I'll cut one of them and use it as a card front panel, and that's okay. We just get, multi-uses out of the pack, and that's fine. So I'm going to trim this up a little bit smaller, and I might even end up trimming it a little bit more later on, but this is how I'm going to trim it for now. Usually I end up either taking a 1/4 inch off both sides or 1/2 inch off both sides, and that is going to give me a nice border when I pop it down onto a card base. Then I'm going to take this stamp. Now, actually, as you can see, this is a gorgeous sort of full-sized flower, but I really just want the flower head, if not a tiny little bit of the foliage. That would be okay. I will end up getting a little bit of it in there and do some green on that one too, but in general I'm really just aiming for the flower head. Again, I'm doing this in some Versamark, so this is just a sticky embossing ink. This in itself, using the Versamark, you can use this as an ink and not adding any embossing powder to it, and it can create a really nice tone on tone as well. I do think it works better with slightly more bold or solid images than these sort of outline ones, particularly on this light color. I'm going to use gold embossing powder for this one, and then this is the Citrus Blend alcohol marker, so just the same as what I showed you before. It has a light, a medium, and a dark, and this is just a way of coloring that I have sort of come across it feels like a cheat, but I don't like that word because it has sort of negative connotations, and actually it's sort of just a hack maybe. A little bit of an overused word, but we'll go with that. And so I'm just colouring these all one colour. So there's, no skill, no technique here. We're just colouring in the flower heads. The centre is a lot more solid with the gold, which is great. Then I'm going to use one green colour and just colour in that tiny little bit of foliage that snuck on there as well. I quite like that. I don't mind that at all. And then the easy way that we're going to do is just using that white colouring in pencil and going around and giving these flowers a little bit of definition. Again, super simple, no blending involved, just white over top of the yellow. If you do a heavier layer, it ends up looking whiter. If you do a lighter layer of the white, it ends up looking like an even lighter version of the yellow. So to me, that's just a win-win situation. So it takes me less than 30 seconds to go around and give all of these flowers a little bit more detail. I have the gorgeous Hello Friend, that scripty ribbon bloom sentiment that I'm going to pop down the bottom. I do this in white. Now I will say that when I pop this on the yellow, it looks like it's hard to see here on screen. It's not hard at all to read in person, and as I said, the photos at the end of this definitely do this a lot better justice, but it does look a little bit hard to read on screen, but I promise you, it's all good, not tricky at all. And white embossing powder with this one, and super simple. This card honestly took no time at all. In fact, both of these cards were super quick. It looks like you've spent time blending and doing gorgeous colouring, but actually not at all. Now this is Master Layouts 4. I love this set. It has the most gorgeous, this is one of my most used rectangles in my card making, and I'm going to cut out a card front from this. It just gives some stitching, it gives the scalloped edge, it just sort of, makes it look elegant without me having to put too much effort in there, and that looks really nice to me. I just centered it around my sentiment so that that was what was obviously going to be the main part there. Pop this one up on some foam tape. I used the 1mm foam tape, but I've done 2 layers of it, so it's going to be just regular 2mm, and then pop it down onto a white card base. Again, I'll pop some sequins on. And we have very quickly created some tone-on-tone beautiful card making. Now, if you would like more Natasha content and you would like to support me, then come on over to my website. Use the QR code on screen, use the camera on your phone, and it will pick up the code. You can follow the link, it goes to my website, and I have a whole lot of content there. And I have just started my brand new series, A Year of Geometrics, and I'm so excited about this one because this is bringing basics and making it fancy with just using what you have. So come on over and join me there too, but I hope you have enjoyed this video and these gorgeous cards, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!